Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to continue my top 10 wish list. Today's focus will be the shadow side. If you did miss my top 10 for the light side, check the description. I'll also leave a link at the end of this video so you can check that one out. Let's get straight into this countdown. Coming in at number 10, I've put in Grima Wormtongue. The reason that I want to see this guy in the game is he's going to bring something completely different to that Isengard team while still being able to complement that lead from Uglu. I could see him hiding in the shadows a lot with stealth while being able to debuff your opponents and somehow being able to disable them without any physical attacks. However, we have seen him use that dagger, so he could actually have quite a lethal backstab attack that you could throw in there as well. He's just one of those characters that could turn the Isengard team from a good team into a really good team. And speaking of someone that could really boost one of the teams in the game right now, at number 9 I'm going to throw in old lumpy face himself, Gothmog. At the moment we've got the Shagrat team. They seem like a little bit of a ragtag mob that's been thrown together. They can do a lot of damage, but someone like Gothmog, who is more military minded, you could build a much more solid team around someone like that. You could even bring in some of those battle-hardened Moranon orcs as well, just to build a completely separate team from the Shagrat team, but you may also be able to get some extra use out of some of those characters as well. Now, coming in at number 8, going back to that Isengard team, someone that I think could bring a whole different dynamic to the game itself, that is Shaku. Now, I know that he was just made up for the movies. However, the thing that he brings to this team is the fact that he is a Warg Rider. Now, I know that at the moment, the way that the teams are currently constructed, it might be difficult to have mounted units in the game, but that could open up a whole new game mode similar to the way that they brought in ships in Galaxy of Heroes. This could bring in a whole new section of the game for mounted warfare. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've always thought those Warg Riders just look really cool, and I'd love to be able to see them in the game at some point. Moving on to number 7 now. Make sure you smile, say cheese, it's the Mouth of Sauron. With his words of deception, you could bring in a whole heap of new debuffs that could be put on the opponents to manipulate the battle in Mordor's favour. Even if he's able to reflect debuffs back onto the opposition to protect the shadow teams, I think that could also be a really interesting way to use him in battle. He was one of the more peculiar characters from the movies and the books. However, I've always just thought he was someone that looked really cool and just something that might be able to add a completely different dynamic to the battle structure. Now, coming in at number 6 is someone that could really refresh that Bolg team down the track once that sort of becomes a thing of the past. And that, of course, is Azog. So far, we don't really have a lot of characters from The Hobbit in the game, but at some point, I'm sure that they're going to be bringing in the other dwarves, and of course, you can't have the dwarves without the main antagonist, which of course is Azog. Now, he's going to be another one of those characters that could do some massive damage, but on top of that, he'd be able to manage the battlefield just a little bit better than some of the other orcs do. He may even be able to force them to taunt or provoke to make sure that they do protect him, so that way he can really do the massive damage when it counts. The only unfortunate thing that I could see if they do bring him into the game is that he won't retain that same look that he had from the Hobbit movies. That was something that I was just really drawn to. I thought it was a really good way to present that character. Now, moving into the home straight of the countdown here, in 5th position, another character that was created for the movies but has been a staple in most Lord of the Rings games, and one of my favorite characters, and that of course is Lurtz. If you want vicious, if you want savage, then Lurtz is the Uruk-hai just for you. One thought that does come to mind when it comes to alerts is having a different stance. So you could have the sword and the shield as one stance and then the bow and arrow as another stance. Similar to the way when they brought in Commander Luke Skywalker in Galaxy of Heroes, how he could actually change from a defensive to an attacking character, and it just really changes up the way that Isengard team could work. He could also be an alternative leader to Ugluk and maybe bring some other kind of dynamic that works within that current team. He may have a few licensing issues to work out before he can make his way into Heroes of Middle-earth, but you never know. If he gets through the paperwork, we just may see him one day. Now we move on to the 4th position, and we're gonna stick with Isengard, and of course the only one left to really bring into this team now is Saruman. One thing that this game is really lacking at the moment is our wizards. Now again, I'm sure that we're going to get Gandalf the Grey at some point and build the rest of that Fellowship team, but if you have Gandalf in the game, you really have to put his nemesis in there in Saruman. Now besides the spells, which you can see a lot of different elemental effects that they could be using for his kit, the other thing that you can take into account is his use of the Palantir. Now this could be a really good way for him to be able to evade opponents, add those stacks of nimble or something like that to his kit, because he'll be able to predict the moves that are coming towards him. The other thing you could do if they do bring Grima Wormtongue into the game is that could lead to some kind of tag team move that they could do together. On top of that, I'm sure there would be a leadership ability that he would be able to have, so that you can put some of those other Uruk-hai in the team that you have already been working on, so they don't go to waste, and he could be just a really powerful leader for that Isengard team. Now coming in at number 3 is a character that I so badly want in this game. I will probably start spending money if I have to just to get him in my squad, and that is going to be the Witch King of Angmar. Now of course we have seen him in some of the challenge modes, we've seen him in the chapters, you even get to use him at one point as a mission character in those dark side nodes, so we know that he's gonna be in the game. He was rumored to be the first legendary character. That wasn't to be, but I'm sure we will see this guy at some point. And if you need any more convincing, just think of having a team of Nazgul, and if you still need convincing, then you're a pretty hard person to convince. Now if you think that I'm that excited about number 3, who could possibly beat that? Let's move on to number 2, someone that the devs have kind of touched on as something that they would like to experiment with, and that of course is the Dark Queen Galadriel. Now over the next couple of years, I'm sure that there are going to be a number of different elf teams that you're going to get to put together, and they're all going to be really good and metas throughout the game. But what if one of those characters was actually on the Shadow team? Now besides just the dark magic that you could imagine her using, I see her functioning a lot like Talion from the Shadow of War game, where she might just be able to possess her opposition, make them do all kinds of things to each other. But on top of that, just think about the kind of team that they might need to introduce to be able to build around her. Who could she recruit? Would there be some dark elves or something that they might be able to bring into the game in their little what if scenario of Galadriel taking the One Ring? Now before we get to number 1, if you guys have anybody else that you want to add to the list that didn't make my top 10, feel free to pop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. So in the number 1 position, Mr. One Ring himself is Sauron. Now I'm not talking about the big armored character. I think he would make a really good boss character, maybe a raid boss type character. I'm talking about the bearer of gifts, the elven version of Sauron, someone that we could really build some stories around and get some really new ideas on different battle tactics. But of course, someone of that kind of power is probably going to be a couple of years away, because they wouldn't really have too many places to go after you have someone that powerful. I couldn't imagine seeing a Sauron meta followed by a Bilbo Baggins meta or something along those lines. But that's my top 10 Shadow wish list. Don't forget guys, like and sub, you know the deal. We got plenty more Heroes of Middle-earth coming your way. Don't miss out, and we'll catch you in the next one.